Dr. Burcin Taner of Mayo Clinic.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk on the future of organ transplantation. Many of you in the audience may not be familiar with organ transplantation. In the next 10 minutes, I would like to give you a brief overview of the history of organ transplantation, the limitations that we face every day, and how Mayo Clinic, specifically Mayo Clinic in Florida, is playing a big role in shaping the future of this complex medical field. Considering the long history of medicine, organ transplantation is very new. It's a very new medical field. It was only in 1954 that the first successful kidney transplant was performed in this country. In 1967, the first heart and liver transplants were performed. But it wasn't until the 1980s when organ transplant moved from more of an experimental field to a clinical reality. And that really helped a lot of patients. Many of these requirements of this field really started in the 1980s. Sorry. I think we're missing some slide. I'm just going to skip that. But in the 1980, the U.S. passed a Uniform Determination of Death Act, which really established the legality of organ transplantation. With the discovery of modern medications in the early 1980s, the first time we were able to keep the immune system in check, so those organs that we transplanted we were able to keep them alive for a long time. And then in 1980s, we developed new organ preservation solutions, which enabled us to keep the donated organs safe outside of the body for long periods, which then enabled us to keep these organs safe for long periods outside of the body, and then be able to transport these organs from one geographic location to another. And then we also established an organization in this country to develop and oversee the organ allocation of donated organs, so those patients were able to get organs in a safe manner. With all this relatively rapid development in the 1980s, organ transplant practice has become a very successful practice in the United States and in the world. Between 1988 and 2019, more than 800,000 organ transplants were performed in this country. The number really is a proof that we have organizational success in this country. We have institutional success for those institutions that house the transplant programs. And then those of us in medicine, we've been able to very successfully care these patients for long periods of time. And then more and more, we're using technology to really help our patients. And above all these, the success story also starts with the families and the donors who donated organs from their loved ones, and then that will help a lot of patients who wait for organ transplants. So there's a lot to celebrate in this field. However, there is the other side of the picture that is very obvious to us, which is transplant depends on organ donors. While American people are very generous and they donate organs, the number of patients who need organ transplant outpaces those who donate organs. Also, not every organ that is donated can be transplanted due to concerns of organ quality. Transplant still depends on anti-rejection medications, which all have a lot of side effects. Whether a patient who needs a transplant will definitely get a transplant is never a certain thing. And unfortunately, some of the organs that are transplanted may not last a long time, so many of the patients require second and third transplants. With all this background information, you all see that there's an unmet patient need. On one hand, there's an increased need for organ transplants. On the other hand, there's not enough organs available for transplant. As a result, in this country alone, every day 20 patients die while waiting for an organ transplant. And currently, over 100,000 people in this country waiting for organ transplants. And that number has been increasing ever since. It's a tragedy for patients with organ failure and their families and their loved ones. It's a tragedy for the society to see these patients die waiting for an organ transplant. And for us in the field of transplantation, we witness this tragedy every single day. So the ultimate goal for us is that no patient should die waiting for an organ transplant. To be successful in this quest, there are two major categories of problems that we need to solve. On one hand, we need to address the increasing number of patients with organ dysfunction and failure. On the other hand, we need to address not having enough organs for transplant. In each of these two major categories, we can find solutions in two different ways. We are aiming to prevent organ failure in patients so that in some patients we can perhaps prevent organ failure from happening. And also in patients who already received organ transplants, we need to find ways to prolong the life of that transplanted organ by decreasing organ rejection. On the other hand, we are aiming to restore donated organs that are currently we consider as inferior quality, so we can increase the utilization of these donated organs. And of course, using technology, we are aiming to engineer new organs that can be transplanted. Mayo Clinic has 3 campuses in Florida, Minnesota, and Arizona. We are the largest transplant provider in the country. To date, we have transplanted more than 28,000 organs at our 3-site campuses. And Mayo Clinic Florida alone has become one of the largest transplant providers since we opened our transplant program in 1998. We transplanted more than 8,000 organs in our campus in Jacksonville. So Mayo Clinic Florida, in fact, has become a destination practice, attracting patients from all 50 states. Therefore, our campus has become the center for innovation and transformation in organ transplantation. To address the current shortcomings of organ transplant field, we envision significant and focused investment in 3 different areas. Mayo Clinic will be investing in tissue engineering with focus on organ regeneration, organ engineering, immunology, and expertise in cellular therapies to find solutions in organ transplant field. To transform the field and find solutions and have an impact on the field, Mayo Clinic will be investing in people, space, and technology. We are recruiting expert personnel. We're dedicating research and innovation space. And we're designing new pathways to bring technology to patient care in an accelerated fashion. Our goal is to advance the biomedical research and education in organ failure, organ dysfunction, regenerative medicine, and transplantation. Specifically, we aim to restore donated organs, so we decrease discarding these organs. We aim to prevent organ failure in patients who have received transplants before, so that we prolong the lifespan of these organs. We aim to come up with solutions for early diagnosis of organ dysfunction so that we can hopefully prevent the need for organ transplants for many patients. We aim to develop new technology to engineer new organs so that when an organ transplant is needed, we can eliminate all of the uncertainties around transplant. We eliminate the wait time for transplant, and then an organ can be custom made for the patient and transplanted at an optimal time. We are imagining a future where we decrease the dependence on organ donation, where we can refurbish less than optimal organs. We can liberate patients from anti-rejection medications, where each and every patient who truly needs an organ can get an organ in a timely manner. That will be custom made at the optimum time without waiting, and those organs last a long time without the need for transplant. As we embarked on this journey of transforming the transplant field, at Mayo Clinic Florida, our starting point really came from our patients and their loved ones and their families, and then they will continue to provide motivation as we continue this journey towards progress and transforming this field. Thank you.